I am going to go and begin our recording and kick the meeting off here today. So I want to thank everybody for joining, and welcome everybody to February. And we were just noting that today is Mardi Gras, and Karen has her beads on, so that it is appropriate to come dressed fashionably to these Zooms, and bring your beads. And we did get a confession early on that Jude has actually been to Mardi Gras and has participated in the festivities. Now she claims, right, that this was not, it was part of a conference. She was just not, she was just there, right? So, but
pure accident.
There you go. And we won't probe that further, but I'm sure there's some great stories to be sharing. Okay. Hey, so again, there's a number of plants that actually were attributed to Mardi Gras, or this is a succulent aeonium. There's a sneezeweed that is quite attractive here. The plumeria is a favorite. I mean, look at that. Look at the colors on that. And then there's this coreopsis, also has an interesting flavor. So these are brightly colored. You can see there's multicolors on the thing. So it's, I guess, keeping with the Mardi Gras theme. So there you go. Okay, so we begin today, with a number of things going on. We have February birthdays, a number of birthdays. Jan, you're with us today. Happy birthday. Sharon, Patty, you're here. Happy birthday coming up this week even. Holy cow. Marianne, Louise, happy birthday. Cassie and Terry. And then quick heads up, the study group is this is last year's. This is actually what I wanted to get to. Yeah, this is the study group for next Monday, 19th at 1 o'clock. Our board meeting is tonight. Reminder that our board meeting is tonight, this evening, beginning at 5:30 p.m. And all the Zoom credentials are in the e-news, that if indeed there's any confusion as to where those are at. So therefore, we have our February dates. We have a full agenda here today. We'll go through our normal announcements and our normal program. Particular Jesse Miller will be joining us here from the Washington National Heritage Foundation. He's the head botanist, and as you saw, you saw in the e-news that he's got the classic Washington license plate, botanist. It says Washington State license plate. So so if you see that vehicle on the road, you'll know who it is. Anyway, so that's coming up. Jesse, by the way, focuses on rare plants and rare plants in the state of Washington. So I'm eager to hear what he has to say. So I want to turn a bit over to John. If you notice that in the e-news, John took some pictures of some of his plants that exhibited leaf curl because of the very recent very cold temperatures. And I think all of us probably saw that phenomenon across our garden plants outside. John, you want to share a couple thoughts about leaf curl?
Yeah, leaf curl is a way of plants keep the brain part here. Anyway, keeps the plant so it can not lose this moisture from the leaves, from the and this is a rhododendron I see here, but I had on my pictures, I had on my Schefflera that had leaf roll. And
yeah, I actually looked up. You can see those are links that I put in there in terms of just why do these plants do curl their leaves, and I particularly focused on rhododendrons just because I was noticing that the rhododendrons, my rhododendrons, are the ones that really curled up. And as John indicated, right, what's going on is the plant actually naturally forms to actually try to protect its stomata on the underneath of the leaves. And it's a natural phenomenon that is pretty cool, in terms of the plant recognizing temperature and then actually trying to shelter the stomata and protect it from freezing and drying out by curling. And there's a leaf curling and leaf droop, And so and this is it was interesting, and that having participated in the training just this past Saturday, I appreciate the fact that the Tapio moment becomes an opportunity for us to talk about little items of interest that are going to be that become obvious opportunities for teaching and learning and sharing to the public with whom we engage with. John, anything else you want to add?
Well, most all of the plants that use this are broadleaf plants, and most of them can handle the cold, as I found out later on. But
it's a little alarming, right, to see that leaf curl and to see how it you wonder, will the plants recover? And the answer is they will.
Yeah, I had one Chapelera that the leaves were all black and just very looked like they're rotting on the bush, and I thought that that was the end of that plant. But as soon as it warmed up, it came right back. Nice green leaves. So, and I had some rhododendrons that also did the same thing.
Any comment from anybody else regarding leaf curling? Any experiences?
Yeah. Rhodies seem to be the most commonly affected here.
Most certainly.
Somebody raised a hand there.
No, Jude made a comment. Is any other comments?
Nope.
Very good.
Rhonda.
Anyways, so I also want to note that we're coming up, by the way, in this month, another calendar item. It's Invasive Species Awareness Week, and so here's some opportunities for some riveting webinars coming up. If anybody was curious about what a freshwater quagga was, there's an opportunity to learn it. And the Mediterranean oak borer. I mean, there's some interesting and rather terrifying, kind of things. Spongy moth. I got to admit, these are new ones for me.
Yeah.
So
isn't the European green crab, isn't that the one that we the gal from Pacific County?
That's right.
Extension?
Exactly. We worry about that a lot here in Willapa, and obviously in Graves Harbor as well. You worry about that.
Yeah. Just a mention of study group is going to go down to the fellow in Tokeland who is doing a study or he's processing green crabs evidently as to how to compost them or use them, recycle them back to the garden. I think Travis in Tokeland, does that ring a bell with anybody?
That's
Travis,
correct.
yeah.
Very good. Anyway, these are coming up. I'd encourage people to check out Washington Invasive Species Council on the website and any of these webinars coming up. Okay, back to OSU and Oregon State in terms of the February to-dos. Tune up the lawnmower. I got to admit, this morning, Tuesday's garbage day, and this morning was light enough and bright enough and calm enough actually to start thinking about, okay, it's time to be outside. So and of course, getting a soil test, this is something that we recommend, obviously, the public, as we start coming out of the winter and we start thinking about what sort of nutrients may have leached out of our soil or how our soils may have transformed themselves over the winter. It is certainly appropriate to start thinking about getting the soil test done. Interesting how OSU is already recommending about thinking about the flowering landscapes and native flower seed mixes that could be added, into the garden. Even at this time, it sure seems a little early to start putting seed mixes out, given the amount of water and precipitation we still have to expect. But this is what OSU is suggesting. Soil testing labs, again, there's the WSU flyer on this is very much aimed towards commercial or large ag operations. I prefer the OSU listing that seems more appropriate to home gardeners and home landscapers. But again, these the recommendations for where labs can be found and different opportunities for getting your soil test are fairly straightforward. And again, this is always an encouragement. Again, it's one of the things we started emphasizing to the trainees during last week's class. is that, you know, when you're searching for these things, throw an OSU or a WSU prefix into your search bar when you're doing that that web search, and to see whether a research-based recommendation can emerge. Okay, also in February to-dos, they talk about, you know, paying attention to your winter damage, thinking about cold frames or a hotbed to start early vegetables. And this is probably appropriate to, you know, recognize that Mike bought himself a greenhouse. So you know, so this is you know, this is you know, new opportunities for covered gardening. And so Val, Mike also enters the Solar Gem, you know, collegiate here of of having greenhouses. And of course, there's the comment, prune and prune and prune and prune. There's still time here to be pruning, right, before the new spring growth comes up. And you know, we had a good pruning session with in fact, I think all the groups did, you know, across all 4 locations during last Saturday's class. So there's still time to get out there. Fertilizing your rhubarb. It's hard to imagine rhubarb needs much more, but you know, but OSU's give those guys a good start. Okay. February to-dos, pest monitoring and management. Of course, the key precepts: don't treat unless we clearly have identified what the problem is. And there's opportunities for, you know, dormant sprays for some of the fruit trees we need to be thinking about. But obviously there are opportunities here to be looking for, you know, any diseased plant materials that may have emerged. And it has, you know, it's been a tough winter. So there's no question that, you know, falling branches, stripped branches, open branches where viruses, bacteria, fungus may have moved in are deserving of cleaning up. Okay. Planting and propagation, windowsill container gardens, and opportunities to start inside. And planting asparagus, this is interesting. I love how the optimum temperatures for germination of asparagus range from 77 to 86 degrees. That's gonna be a long time around here before we see that one. So but this is the University of Minnesota is giving us that recommendation here, you know, is that plant asparagus seed as soon as the soil is workable in the spring. That's bold for those Minnesotans. Planting garden peas and sweet peas where the soil is dry enough. So holy cow, it's amazing. We're talking February and they're talking about OSU's talking about planting seeds. Again, very
soil dry enough.
Yeah.
Not this side of the mountains.
Yeah, that was one of the first things I learned about gardening when I moved to Oregon, was if you don't get your peas in by President's Day, you know, you've done something really wrong.
Yeah.
So even in the rain and the mud, you're supposed to plant them.
Is that
But-
right? So seriously, do they hold up pretty well, Jude? I mean, so seriously, yeah.
No,
President.
I did it. I did an experiment one year where I planted on President's Day. I think there was one day then, but no, you don't have to anymore because most of our peas do not succumb to the pea nation virus, and that's why you wanted to get them in early so they didn't hit the hot weather in the summer and come out with this virus disease. So plant your peas whenever you want to.
But early, but maybe not this early.
Not so early.
Okay. They are recommending, of course, indoor plantings of all the cold crops here, you know, the broccoli and the Brussels sprouts. So it is time to start thinking about this, right? You know, and making sure it's good. Of course, always a good recommendation to make sure your seed orders are in, if not already. Given the fact that you know, once the seeds, once people start, once the general public starts thinking about planting, there'll be hard pressure to get your seeds, get quality seeds to where you want them. Okay, quick and shifting, by the way, to just other reminders here, is that, you know, we are in our we have the new website is up. The URL, the old URL, pnwmg.org, will work, right? It will redirect you to the new website. And I wanted to, you know, I just wanted to particularly make a highlight here is that, you know, right on that home page, right on the home page of pnwmg. You're going to see that MGV, that Master Gardener Volunteer icon right up there in the upper right. And by clicking through there, you'll go to the volunteer portal that is really set up for ideal and very simplistic connection to Give Pulse. So you can, it's, you know, the opportunity, the ease of now, per the website, of just a few clicks getting into Give Pulse, where we can record our service hours and our continuing education hours and so forth. So again, a shout out to everyone who participated in the updates for the new website, and in particular, a shout out to Terry here for that icon, that the leaf with the
It's-
waves. You know, it's just
Lovely.
it's a beautiful icon that really
It
that is
is.
it's getting a lot of comment, by the way, when you talk to people about, you know, that's pretty cool, you guys, what you have up there.
I've heard some compliments at the State Foundation when we're doing the open labs calls. Some people have commented on it.
Yeah. So again, congratulations to everybody in terms of making this thing happen. But again, the opportunity here is making sure that it's use the website, bookmark it on your browser, and and know that it becomes a very easy path, right, to get to the volunteer portal and to Give Pulse. Okay. Okay. Other announcements we want to share, you know, and get around here. I've got a few things to share just to begin to give some thoughts here. But any thoughts from anyone here in terms of news that we want to get out to the community?
I have a couple things.
Please, Aaron.
The first one, if I don't know if it was on the agenda. Val, do you mind if I talk about the
No,
form?
please do.
Okay.
I wanted to tell you, I just got Vivian's 1.5-page long letter about what you're gonna do. So
Yeah.
I didn't know if you were gonna talk about it or if I was just gonna read the letter, but go ahead, please.
Okay.
It's yours.
So we put a group together to work on a way to streamline the notification for events within the program. And so I created a form on the website, and that form is password protected to help prevent spam and duplication and things like that. So we're kind of limiting the access to that, so that way we have consistency. And so the regional directors are going to be responsible for submitting their events and the event within the region. And then for things like program-wide events like plant clinic, or not plant clinics, home and garden show, study group, things like that, the event coordinators will be able to input those. So and the this is going to help to make sure that all of the information for events is consistent across all the platforms, because when that form is filled out, it goes to the coordinators, it goes to the foundation, it goes to WSU, it goes to Katie for the e-news, it goes to Karen for the Facebook, and it goes to all the regional directors, so that everybody knows what's going on in both counties. So, and it also goes to Vivian and Chris to put on the website. So we ask that all event notifications come through this form instead of going directly to those people, including like meetings or events that go in the e-news. If you have pictures or articles or whatever that you want to submit to the e-news, those can still go directly to Katie. And for those who will be inputting, I think Vivian sent out a great email today to the people who we've kind of figured out would be the most likely to be entering these events, and if they want to delegate it to someone else in their region or in their team, that's fine too. But I just need to know, because I can give them access and make sure they're getting notified properly and things like that. So I think I covered it all. Does anybody have any questions about that?
That pretty much covers it. And thank you, Aaron, and thank you, Vivian, for that wonderful synopsis and letter you sent out. But my idea was, and we've honored that all the people that communicate with all the big events like Terry and Midge and who else? Cindy does some with a demo garden, will still do what they do, and that will go, they will have access to Erin's form. And the regional directors will do like regional stuff, plant clinics, which are public, work parties, and I see there's tons of stuff already on the volunteer calendar. Will go to the volunteer calendar, and this is all dispersed, like Erin said. So she has worked tirelessly on getting this interface to work, and I'm so grateful. And also, won't this also be tied to the state website eventually? Isn't that?
It's
or-
not tied directly, no. It's
Okay.
Chris will actually take the public events that are submitted through the form and then resubmit them to the state foundation's calendar. So that way there's only one person who's doing it and they don't get duplicated. But that way we get more exposure on the state foundation website too, because they have an event calendar and a plant sale calendar that's on
Yeah.
their website.
I like that, and that's especially germane to Terry with her tourism grant. As many people as we can pull into Grace Harbor County from around the state, it just keeps making us look really, really, really good. So thank you again, all of you who worked on this. I really appreciate all of you.
So remind us, where is this form is where?
It's on the website. There's a button at the bottom of the homepage. And I plan to do a short Zoom meeting for the people who are going to be inputting these events so that I can walk them through it. I can give you the link. There's a link on the website and I'll give you the password. Yeah, and that's what I set out, a big distribution list. So all of these people who need that information will get it. So WC will get it, program will get it, foundation will get it, and the people who share that information too, like Katie and Karen.
It'll be great when you do that Zoom to record it, right? So that we can ensure that we can post it on the website. We can post it on the YouTube channel.
Yeah, definitely.
Good thought.
Erin,
Yes.
when is the next Seeds for Thought? And are you still including things like flyers for events, for Master
Yes.
Gardener events?
Yeah, we're
Okay.
still doing flyers. The next, when does the next issue go out? It goes out the 1st of May. So you still have time.
Okay. When's the deadline?
Let's see if it goes out May. Wait, went out February. April 1st.
Oh, okay. Great.
So it
Thank you.
gives me a month to put it together. So
Okay.
Other questions, comments for Erin, Val?
Erin has made this as simple as possible, and I'm as in any process that has to do with technology, there's a learning curve and there's a tryout period. So the first couple months, I hope it runs well because Erin has done a lot of texting on it, but just to get people used to the fact that we have one input for all information for both counties, and the private volunteer calendar. So hopefully, and the idea is it has to be simple so we don't scare people away from using it. So, but this will be the only input right, Erin, for our communication through our two counties. And it will definitely be password protected.
yeah,
So
it is password protected. Yeah.
not anyone can get in and post stuff. They have to be designated by Erin because she has to program everybody in to the system who is a contributor, as I understand it. So, yeah, I think we'll get questions as we go forward.
So Erin, if there's any links or any documents you want to share in the chat, go ahead and feel free to put those in as we go through the meeting here today. If there's anything we want to just to make sure that the group here today is plugged in on this. Other announcements, other news on this Mardi Gras Tuesday.
Northwest Flower and Garden Festival starts tomorrow. The program will be there with a larger booth this year. It's 10 by 30. A third of it will be designated for a plant clinic, and then the other two-thirds will be for just engaging with people. And there were 16 foundation chapters that contributed to the booth, including us. So that made it, and the Flower and Garden Festival they kind of went above and beyond this year as far as what they offered. The programs, every seminar that is eligible for continuing education will have our flower icon on the program that everybody receives who goes to the Flower and Garden Festival. So that's huge exposure, because people are gonna say, well, what is that symbol, you know? And it's also, we got a discount code that people could use, and when they use that code, they actually are giving $2 to the Master Gardener program for every purchase through that link. So yeah, seem to really be forging a good partnership with the Northwest Flower and Garden Festival at the state level.
Yeah, Erin, where is the location of the booth?
It is, I have a map. It is right, it's on the walkway, on the main path to the display gardens, I think.
Great.
Yeah, so it's a really good location. It's a high traffic location.
Okay. And who from our group is going to be helping out? Who's going to be there?
Me,
Just you?
I think just me.
One thing, I'm hoping all of you read Helen Hepp's announcement that she's
Yeah.
down ill, and she has 6 tickets available at her discounted cost. So, you know, if anyone wants to take a chance to go up to Seattle the next few, and that runs Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, 4 days.
Can't remember if it's
I can't remember. Yeah, anyway, contact Helen if you would like to go on the spur of the moment and need a ticket.
And perhaps that's a good link. If you didn't receive that email from Katie yesterday talking about those extra tickets, you know, you may want to be checking your spam or your junk folders.
Right.
You know, one of the key points that we have to do, because we send out a lot of emails, right? You know, all of our email applications are very attuned to finding spam and to pushing it away. Sometimes emails that we that we want to receive end up in those junk mail, in those junk mail areas. It's appropriate, depending upon what email application you use, be it Outlook, be it Yahoo, be it Gmail, or be it Safari from an Apple environment. There are ways to whitelist a particular sender. And we are asking you to make sure that you whitelist Katie Lutz's email address, Katie Lutz, and her email, so that all emails coming from the foundation, right, you know, will be received to you. So it's imperative that you don't miss these emails, because this is how we communicate. Anybody else have any questions or comments regarding whitelisting or junk mail or spam filters? Other announcements then.
I just wanted to let people know wasn't able to join right away when the meeting started, but that we did have our second class on February 10th in our 4 locations. This is the first time we'd actually had Zoom and Owls broadcasting from the 4 locations. 35 trainees. People seem to be really supportive and happy that we were doing this project, this pilot for this year. And our next class is going to be on March 16th, which is a Saturday, in the 4 locations again: Ocean Shores, Montesano, South Bend, and Ilwaco. And we're going to be talking about soil and how to build healthy soils in our two counties. Same time, same places.
And we'll have more information coming out on those as we get further. Other comments, other questions, other announcements?
Sorry, Terry. One new thing, Scott has chased down Home Depot and they have made arrangements to have 6-hour plant clinics at Home Depot in Aberdeen, which should be a pretty big event. So that I'm waiting to get all this stuff input when the forms are ready, so everybody knows that. But I'll be announcing for the need for volunteers at our monthly GGH meeting. So I thought that was, and Home Depot, just for your own information, has changed management. And they are putting an emphasis on customer care. Like I go in there and I get rushed by people because I'm gray hair and I walk stumped over every now and then. So I have had more help loading up stuff. And they were really open to Scott's ask about holding a plant clinic, which will benefit them too. So we're really rolling along. So I'm very happy.
This is exactly what Bev doesn't want to hear, is an opportunity for me to spend more time at Home Depot.
Uh-oh.
Rhonda, you put some note in the chat here about cattails getting in around your hummingbird feeders. You want to amplify on that?
Only if you want to know, this is a great time to head out to the back roads, find the cattails, cut a nice long stalk. I take those stalks and I shove them in the ground in and around my hummingbird feeders. And after every rain, I just fluff the tips a little bit. And I happily watch hummingbirds from now and through probably June pull the fluff off to build their nests.
Sweet.
It's so fun to watch them. So many people say they never see them take it. You just have to be patient and you have to be at the right spot at the right time to see them do it, but they love it. And a sunny day like today is a beautiful day to go out and find them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's go hunt cattails here, everybody. Okay, a couple of quick reminders here as we move on. Remember, we're meeting here today as a general meeting of our foundation. As our foundation, we are a nonprofit. We're a 501c3. So we're recognized by the IRS in the state of Washington, right? As a nonprofit that focuses 100% of what we do, towards, the Master Gardener program. The program, of course, right? The program is indeed sanctioned by WSU and WSU Extension. And so this is the key distinction here, because as Master Gardeners, right, we definitely follow those precepts. And these items and this information is on the WSU website that talks about the program versus the foundations. And I think it's important to, as we participate in the program and as we represent ourselves to the public, right, that we're very clear about who we are and who the programs are. Okay. And again, as we just follow up on that, we want to keep emphasizing this because, again, the distinction between following the program, making sure we have our volunteer hours, our continuing education hours, the research and activities that we involve ourselves in are distinct from the fundraising efforts that we do as a foundation. And so as we get into this very busy spring and the Home and Garden Show and our garden tour, our activities here indeed are focused on raising money to support the programs that we invest in. And then coming back to the foundation overall, as a corporation, we do have, we have elections, and the membership that's a key point I want to recognize here is that as a nonprofit, as a foundation, in the state of Washington, membership in the foundation has to be an opt-in. And so when we talk about, paying dues and specifically saying we want to be a member of the foundation, we are conforming to a Washington state statute that requires that individuals who are members of an organization, they opt into this thing. So we can no longer simply automatically enroll our master gardeners here in Grays Harbor and Pacific counties into the foundation. It is necessary that that each individual determine their membership, which is why we have a small dues program, and we ask for that collaboration. So our president is Elizabeth. Our president-elect is Mike. And the other officers are here listed on the page. A key part of what we do then is reach out into each of the geographies. So Renee, Valerie, and Sushila lead our 3 geographic sub-regions. And these sub-regions then, and the elected officials and their operations are actually determined by these individual sub-geographies. Our liaison, our faculty liaison, still has to be determined, has to be proposed by WSU. I believe Dan is going to join us this evening at the board meeting to speak about the process and progress by WSU in assigning us a faculty liaison. Our program coordinators, also required by WSU, are Alina and Brenda. And we are one of 2 counties in the state, right, that have volunteer coordinators. So both Alina and Brenda, as master gardeners, are also serving as our program coordinators. And as we've announced I think in prior communications, Brenda will be leaving her coordinator role this month in February. Alina will be leaving the coordinator role at the end of this year. So it is imperative that we start thinking now across our community, our foundation community here, about folks to step up into the coordinator role. It's required by WSU Extension that we have both a liaison, faculty liaison, and program coordinators. So these are activities which we do definitely need your volunteer support. Regarding volunteer support, let's make sure that in Give Pulse you are recording your hours. And it's a good habit early in the year to get habitualized with actually entering your hours as you contribute them, so that we're not in this hurry up and finish by the end of at the end of the year here. So I encourage everyone to be thinking about what we need to be about ensuring that hours that are contributed even now are being recorded. Okay. With that, any other announcements? Any other announcements? What have we missed that we want to make sure we're sharing?
Well, should I
Jerry?
just say a little bit about the Home and Garden Show and the garden tour?
That's a good point. I think I have this dates. Yeah.
Okay,
Please.
was that coming later in the meeting?
No, jump in.
Okay, well, they're both coming along well. Lots of vendors are signing up, and it's very exciting because we have new vendors. A lot of our vendors from last year are coming back. So it looks like it's going to be another full show. In terms of the garden tour, we are still rounding out gardens for the tour. And one thing that came up recently at one of our GGH meetings was great because Renee came with a plea for help at the South Bend demo bed area. They need help cleaning up because, of course, it will be featured as part of the garden tour. So if you are able to help with that, that would be sensational. In terms of the plant sale, now is a good time. I'm starting to get out in my garden, and part of that is dividing plants and moving things around. So it's an excellent time to start thinking about potting up some plants for the garden tour plant sale. Robin mentioned she has a lot of pots. I have a lot of pots too. So if you need pots, we will figure out how to get you pots. So Rhonda, do you want to add anything?
No, I don't think so, other than I'm going to be reaching out to a couple of our members for helping, but no, everything is on track as usual. It's going to be another good show.
I want to echo quickly the point about the plant tour. We work closely with the Planter Box, one of the nurseries down here, and that Teresa there has already been donating little starts, extra starts that she has that she knows she won't be able to sell to us, right? For planting, for resale. So I would encourage you, if you have a favorite nursery and a favorite nursery that you frequent and that know you as a master gardener, have no hesitation to ask them, hey, is there going to be any extra material, right, that we might take off your hands and use for our fundraising efforts as we get into the spring. Val.
Thank you. One more word about, it was great to have Renee at our meeting, and I've been going back and forth with her on emails, and I've decided for expediency and not taking our workforce away from Cindy at our demo garden, we have planned on March 29th and April 5th to go down to South Bend as a group and help Renee. So anybody is welcome. And it's Friday because that's Renee's day off. And they're on Fridays, and she has to be there to tell us what she wants us to do. So that will be announced thoroughly again at our next GGH meeting. I have 4 people. So, if you're interested, call me or email me, and we'll try to make arrangements if you need transportation, but we'll need to bring our own tools. So anyway, yeah, I think it'll be fun. And it feels good to help her out. So
Can you please repeat the dates?
March 29th and April 5th at the South Bend Garden, and that will be from 10 a.m. to 12 noon. 2 hours, 2 days. And she emailed me back and she said, I just want everybody to come every day. And I said, well, I can't take our troops away from our demo garden that much. So I think because she has a mess down there, it sounds like, and it just needs a lot of cleanup. So I thought it would be just a great opportunity for us to give her a kickstart because, like she says, she and Brenda and Sharon KB are the ones who work in that demo garden. So, and I'm sure other people, and we had an intern at our GGH meeting too who wants to join. So I just think it'll be fun, and it's a team building thing, and it's just a cross regional borders thing, and I'm really looking forward to it. So.
And so speaking of trainees, right, March 16th, as Alina noted, right, is our next training. And so that'd be a great opportunity there at that training to say, hey, folks, March 29th, April 5th, keep on, think about coming on down.
In fact, Elizabeth, if you're listening, I would like to be present at that training, and I can do that announcement, but I'm also very interested in soil health and would like to help. So
very good.
Okay, yeah, we'll talk, Val.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Kelly, I have a question.
Please go ahead.
Do you have anything written out on for the whole year for these meetings, for our meetings, Master, whether it's a Tuesday or a Saturday or?
So indeed, Connie, it's a very good point. I should put that up there, but we've made a decision. The board made a decision for 2024 that all of our general meetings will be on this Tuesday. They will be on the second Tuesday at 10 o'clock. The reason being is that we switched things up last year in 2023. It did not appreciably change the participation of the meeting. So we tried to have some meetings on Saturday, et cetera, but there was no fundamental difference. So again, this is a good, thank you for the question, Connie, because it reinforces the fact that all of our general meetings will be on the second Tuesday of the month at 10 o'clock. They'll all be recorded and posted on our YouTube channel. All of our board meetings for the foundation will be on 5:30. We'll begin at 5:30 on the second Tuesday of each month.
Thank you.
And of course, it is appropriate, as Rhonda and Karen have their beads for Mardi Gras, it's appropriate that everyone show up appropriately decorated for our Mardi Gras here today. Okay. So a couple of other comments, just a reminder that our emphases, I want to lead into Jesse, who's with us here today. Our emphases for the WSU Master Gardener program include these points. And I want to bring recognition, because this really starts taking the Master Gardener program into areas that that we've not typically have been before, right? We're far more than simply growing flowers and vegetables, right? We are indeed thinking about nature. We are thinking about plant diversity. We're thinking about climate change and its impact, into the areas we're dealing here. So there's that, the areas of focus here are areas for all of us to remind ourselves that we need to be expanding our horizons relative to learning and relative to focus. With that, then I want to introduce, Jesse, who's joined us here. And Jesse, of course, I already made comment about your license plate, which it's got to be the coolest thing, is that, from anything we've seen here, from a Master Gardener standpoint. So I want to congratulate you on, and by the way, I'm curious, was it difficult for you to get that license plate? That seems like a challenging one to have secured.
Yeah, hi, good morning, everyone. I have to admit that is not my license plate. That is the license plate of Washington botanist Mark Derrick. I could only dream of having a license plate that cool.
Okay, so the game is up, but the picture of you next to this thing just really works out. It's a super thing.
Thank you.
Hey, so Jesse, I'm turning the share over to you, and again, I want to introduce you. As you got to love that your title again, lead botanist, right? For the Washington Natural Heritage Foundation. We are eager to learn more about what the foundation's all about your research, and in particular, your work on rare plants. And are there activities and concerns and thoughts that we as Master Gardeners who are dealing with all of Southwest Washington here, 3,500 square miles across our two counties, right? Innumerable, biomes for it, based from the coast all the way to inland. So to all the way from temperate rainforest in the north, all the way down here to the Columbia River shoreline. So, I mean, I think there's a tremendous opportunity here for plant life, that hopefully is of interest, and hopefully worthy of preservation.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, happy to be here and happy to try to address some of those questions. Is it okay if I share my slides here?
Go ahead.
All right. All right, y'all seeing that?
We are indeed are.
Oops.
Now we're seeing your slide deck. If you're going to,
yeah, I'll try to go to presentation mode here.
Yeah. And then you'll need to share that window.
Okay, let's see here. The Zoom toolbar is blocking me, but let's see what I can do. All right, do you see the presentation now, or do I need to?
Yes, we do.
Okay, perfect. Great. Well, yeah, hi everyone. Glad to get to chat with all of you this morning. So yeah, as Kelly said, I'm the lead botanist for the Washington Natural Heritage Program. So I'll talk just a little bit about who we are and what we do, and have a couple little stories to tell that I think will be relevant to gardeners. I actually pasted in a bunch of slides here from a presentation I gave for the Native Plant Society a few weeks ago. So won't get to everything I have here, but can share a few anecdotes and things that might be of interest. And just to clarify, the name is the Natural Heritage Program. The Heritage Foundation is a right-wing group. Just want to clarify that. Different organization, whole different game.
My bad. My apologies.
No worries. So we're a small program. The Natural Heritage Program is divided into two groups, the ecology group and the botany group. I lead the botany group, and my colleague Sienna Wessel is the other botanist who's part of our program. So it's just the two of us working statewide to try to keep track of rare plants in Washington. That's at least the majority of our job is tracking rare plants. And Sienna and I basically do the same job. So if you're looking to get in touch with someone to talk about Washington plants, either one of us can generally provide you with the same information. So feel free to get in touch with either of us anytime. part of our job is being available to the public to talk about plant matters. So what do we do? Our program has a few major goals. We perform research and monitoring for rare plants statewide. So we're basically trying to keep track of all the rare plants in Washington and pay attention to plants that are having a hard time in particular. Some plants are doing better than others. And we divide the rare plants in Washington into a couple different groups based on basically their regulatory status. So the Endangered Species Act protects some species at the federal level. Of course, the ESA is federal legislation. So we have about 10 species in Washington that are listed under the Endangered Species Act, which we refer to as federally listed species. In contrast, we have about 371 rare plants in Washington of all different kinds. So most of those rare plants are listed on our state rare plant list, but are not federally listed. So we probably spend about half our time dealing with the 10 federally listed plants and the other half of our time dealing with the other 360 state listed plants. So one thing that's been amazing to me being in this position is just how powerful the Endangered Species Act is for generating resources to focus on these rare species. So it's certainly one great example of successful conservation policy at the federal level. And we work closely with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, who's in charge of administering the Endangered Species Act. Most of my salary is paid by Endangered Species Act grants. Another thing we do is maintain a list of all the rare plants in the state, which we update periodically. So I'm currently in the process of updating our state rare plant list. And that'll probably be out later this winter or in the early spring. And as soon as we have it done, we'll start on the next round, basically. We talk to other botanists all around the state and get people's input, and then do a lot of research and update species. In a state as diverse as Washington, there's always more to learn about our flora. We're always encountering new plants that are rare that we didn't really know about. And of course, in some cases, we have success stories where things are removed from the list because they turn out to be more common than we expected. In other cases, species go downhill and we add them to the list as they become more rare. So we actually maintain a database of all the rare plant populations we know about in Washington. And this is something that's available to the public. We have a version of it on our website. It's called the Washington Natural Heritage Program Data Explorer. So you can actually go on our website and get on the Data Explorer. It's a map-based interface, and you can actually zoom right to your neighborhood and see if we have any plants on the map around where you live. But you can also write to us to get rare plant data. We'll generally provide maps or other information you need. And this is often for planners and developers, people doing projects where they have to think about rare plants. They're the ones often contacting us for this info. And then the last part of our mission is outreach and education to talk to the public about botanical matters and especially rare plants. So that's part of why I'm here today. So a few things I thought it might be useful for gardeners to know. We often have gardeners express interest in growing rare plants, which potentially could be a good thing under certain circumstances, but there are definitely some things to know before trying to grow rare plants in your garden. Federally listed plants, so plants that are protected under the Endangered Species Act, are illegal to transport or buy or sell. So unless you already have it on your land, you can't legally start growing it on your land, unless you get a permit from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. So that would be if your land was part of an official recovery process for a species where your land was written into the plan to help a species recover, which is possible. But if you already have a federally listed plant on your land, you can actually do whatever you want with it. You can go in and bulldoze it. Animals are protected at a higher level on private land than plants. So federally listed plants receive a lot of protections on public land, but not so much on private land. And in Washington, our state listed plants do not have very many regulatory restrictions. The only exception would be, the main exception would be if you have a wetland on your land, then you might actually have to consider your rare plants before doing some kind of development project. But this is in contrast to Oregon, where there are actually pretty strict restrictions on state listed plants. In Oregon, you have to have a permit to transport or buy or sell state listed plants, just like you do for federally listed plants everywhere. So, you know, if you get pulled over, that the officer is going to say, excuse me, are those Fritillaria Gentneri seeds you got in the glove box there? It's, you know, it can happen. No, not really. But those are the rules, and you won't be able to buy these things on the open market. So this is just a map of what our rare plant database looks like. So you can find this on our website and zoom in. We actually track both ecosystems and plants. So I believe on this map, the blue polygons are ecosystems and the green ones are plants. I might have it backwards. Of course, nailing down how to define an ecosystem is a little more challenging than nailing down how to define a plant, but that's what other folks in our program do. So I thought I would just maybe I'll tell this story and then pause and see if there are any questions or wrap it up there. One issue that I'm involved in is trying to manage a couple of our paintbrush species, Castanea species that occur on the prairies of Washington and Oregon too. So I call this the saga of the paintbrushes. And I'll go ahead and start with that. I'm sure many people here are familiar with paintbrushes or Castanea. It's a diverse genus in the broomrape family, formerly in the figwort family, Scrophulariaceae, which was split up. Paintbrushes are hemiparasites, so they do photosynthesize, but they also parasitize neighboring plants and receive some of their resources that way. So one plant that's been a major focus of conservation efforts in Washington is golden paintbrush, or Castanea levisecta. And this plant is a prairie plant. It grows at Mima Mounds and other prairies up and down the Puget Trough, and also in the Willamette Valley in Oregon. And it goes all the way up into the San Juan Islands and into British Columbia a little bit. And it's been declining in the wild for years. It's been a species of conservation concern, I think, since at least the 80s. And it's been a pretty steady decline of wild plants in Washington. It was federally listed, I believe, in 2007. And after that, there was a major outplanting effort to establish new populations by seeding in plants. So in this figure on the top here, the orange line represents the number of planted plants on the landscape. So you can see the number of planted plants has increased, but then the blue line is the number of wild plants. So the blue line is the same on both graphs, just showing more resolution in the lower graphs. You can see wild plants have continued to decline. So we're going to see this plant go extinct in the wild. But fortunately, the outplanting plants have been effective. So we're hopeful it'll stay on the landscape, though, as a planted plant. But it remains a species of conservation concern. We're certainly not out of the woods with restoring this. And we still don't fully understand why it was declining. It seems to be related to seed production. The second paintbrush that's part of this saga is a plant called harsh paintbrush, Castanea hispida. Not a rare plant, it's a common plant, but it's been widely planted on prairies because it can be a host plant for a rare butterfly, Taylor's checker spot. And what people didn't realize when they were planting the Castanea hispida plants is that it can hybridize with golden paintbrush, the rare plant. And so what we're seeing at places like the Glacial Heritage Preserve is that the yellow paintbrush is hybridizing with the red harsh paintbrush and producing these orange hybrids, which potentially could wipe out some of the populations of golden paintbrush. It could basically be hybridized out of existence. Historically, harsh paintbrush may have occurred in the prairies a little bit, but it may have been more of a mountain thing. So these planting efforts may represent a bit of an extension of harsh paintbrush outside of its historical range. So to the gardeners, I just want to say, if you are within 2 kilometers of a remnant prairie where there might be golden paintbrush, my advice is not to grow any paintbrushes on your property. because they can potentially hybridize pretty long distances with, stuff like bees transferring pollen. Or if you want advice about things like whether to grow paintbrush on your property, you can contact us and we're happy to talk to you. And there's actually a working group that asks people to contact them to notify them of any plans to grow paintbrushes, so they can tell you what the risks are given your specific location. This might apply a little bit more to people doing concerted restoration efforts as opposed to just home gardeners, but there may be some overlap there too. So anyway, that's kind of one little story I wanted to tell. So I think I'll pause there. I know this wasn't supposed to be a really long presentation, but happy to answer any questions or chat.
Jesse, are climate change contributing to some of these issues, or just mostly habitat loss or development?
Yeah, great question. Climate change is huge. Absolutely a big challenge we face. Different rare plants have different threats. I'll actually zoom ahead to one slide. Won't go into this in detail. The rarest plant in Washington right now is Umtanum desert buckwheat. Maybe not the rarest by numbers, but the most endangered plant. And this is a great example of something that's probably the primary threat it faces is probably climate change. It grows in really dry places, and climate change is making these places even drier. The soil moisture is getting sucked out of the soil earlier in the season. We're having these heat waves in May now that we typically didn't have quite that early historically. So the soil's drying up before the plant even has a chance to bloom in June. But yeah, habitat loss is huge. Climate change is huge. Invasive species are huge. And then of course, all these things are often happening together at the same site. So our native plants are under a lot of stress right now. I guess that, these conversations can get depressing, but I think the good news is we know more about our native plants than we've ever known before. And I also think there's more interest in the public in conservation than there ever has been before. So, despite the challenges we face, there's still some reasons to be hopeful about the future of native biodiversity.
Are there programs that individuals, in the public community, such as master gardeners, can take to actually start cultivating some of these natives? I appreciate the fact that it would be in an artificial, or certainly would be in a home landscape or a protected landscape. But I mean, is there, are seeds available or programs available to help encourage this kind of cultivation?
For rare plants, we don't typically focus on home cultivation. My advice for gardeners would be to focus on growing more common native plants. And in a way, you can actually contribute to rare plants by doing that. If you grow a native plant garden at your house, that's really going to encourage native wildlife and especially native pollinators. And one big issue with a lot of our native plants is they don't seem to be getting pollinated to the extent they need. So just supporting pollinator communities by growing a native plant garden might be, in my opinion, might be the best thing that you could do as a home gardener to support rare plants, rather than trying to grow rare plants on your site.
Other questions for Jesse, comments for Jesse at this point?
But for people, I do have one more just opportunity to mention here. For people who are interested in getting more involved in rare plants, one thing you might consider doing is joining the UW Rare Care program. This is a community science program that trains volunteers to go out and monitor rare plants. So you go, and you don't have to be a scientist to do this. They provide the training. So you go to their training session and they teach you the methods, and then you receive an assignment, and you can choose what part of the state you want to work in. And then they send you out to visit a rare plant population that no one has gone to see in a while. And you can see if you can find that rare plant and send them some information about it. So this is another way to get involved in rare plant work for people who are interested. I actually don't, they usually accept monitoring applications in the fall and winter. It may be too late to apply for this year, but you can go to their website and check it out. If not this year, you can get in next year.
What are the rarest plants in coastal Washington that we might be looking for?
Yeah, so one thing that's on my mind, and you all are like Southwest Washington, right? That's this group.
Yes. So Grace
Yeah.
Harbor and Pacific counties are the two southwesternmost. We have the ocean is to our west, the Columbia River is to our south.
Yeah, so the thing that's really on my mind in that part of the world is the pink sand verbena, Abronia umbellata. We have two known populations right now. There's one at the end of the Long Beach Peninsula at Ledbetter Point. And then there's another one by Tokeland across the bay from there. And I believe those are the only two populations we know of that are left in the state. Historically, there were many populations. It occurred in several spots on the north side of the Olympic Peninsula around Port Angeles, and even down into Puget Sound on the east side of the peninsula. Um, it's a pretty striking plant, so it's hard to imagine it's being totally overlooked, but we also know it fluctuates a lot. There can be seasons where there's a lot of it, and then other years where it just doesn't come up at all. So it's certainly hard to survey for. So one thing we're always interested in is if you see a pink sand verbena that's not at the two sites we already know about, which are Ledbetter Point and Tokeland. I think it's Rockaway Beach by Tokeland. Definitely let us know about that, and take a photo for sure. There, it may be that more will pop up out there, and that's something we would love to find.
Put a couple links about pink sand verbena in the chat. Jesse, as you noted, right, it's well known to us in Pacific County that those of us, I mean, I'm just a few miles away from Ledbetter Point, right, at this point. And so we actually made the major restoration at the Willapa National Wildlife Refuge to remove all the European beach grass, right, that was crowding it out. And we were pretty excited to find the seeds, right, from the pink sand verbena had remained viable after some 50 years, right, So it is pretty exciting that if you build that habitat, the plants will come.
Yeah, no, it's great. I was out there this summer, and it was really impressive to see the size of the area of that restoration. Pretty ambitious project, and of course that's exactly what species like this need, is the restoration of open dunes. But yeah, there are other, I most of my work has not been coastal. So I've been in this position for just over a year. So and it's a huge job, of course, getting to know the 371 rare plants in the state. So I haven't done a ton of work in the coast. So I can't talk too much about all the rare coastal species. I recommend this book, which some people may already know. Can I get it to not blur? Anyway, it's called The Field Guide to the Rare Plants of Washington. It was published by some of my colleagues in 2011. We actually have a more up-to-date field guide on our website that we update annually. But sometimes it's nice to have a physical book that you can take with you in the field. So if you want to learn more about rare plants across Washington, I highly recommend this book, and you can look at the range maps and find stuff close to you, or just go on our website and look at our digital map online.
And I did put those links already into the chat, Jesse. Yeah. So
perfect.
including the field guide. So it's great stuff.
Excellent. Anything else?
I'm just curious. I actually live on native prairie south of Mima. So that kind of gives you an idea of how broad our area is, because that's a completely different climate. So I'm wondering if there's anything that I could do. I have 5 acres. Most of it's undeveloped. So I'm wondering if there's anything I could do to encourage the paintbrush on the prairie. We don't have any. We have like a lot of other grasses and camas and that, but
yeah, so before planting paintbrush, the ideal thing to do would be to contact the working group, which I could put you in touch with if you email me, and just check with them about your location, because what they can do is they can look on a map and see what other paintbrush populations have been planted around you, since most of these are planted populations at this point. And the idea is, if you're more than 2 kilometers from any of the others, you potentially could grow golden paintbrush on your property. But if you're closer to other populations, they might ask you not to. I mean, certainly one great thing you could do would just be working on restoring the prairie community on your site in general, encouraging the native plants, preventing woody plants from encroaching on the prairie. And again, it comes back to pollinators. We think the paintbrush may be declining. The issue seems to be it's not producing enough seeds. A lot of the flowers do not seem to actually produce viable seeds, and then it may be that they're not getting pollinated. So by just restoring high quality prairie habitat, even in the absence of paintbrushes, you're encouraging those pollinators. You're creating habitat for those pollinators. And in the bigger picture, that's actually helping restore species like paintbrush. So, even if the committee says like your site isn't a great place to plant paintbrushes, just encouraging a nice native prairie plant community in general, even just common plants, can make a huge contribution.
All right.
Continue on.
Are you involved with what's going on with the mountain goats and the Olympic Peninsula?
I have not been involved in that. I have heard there have been some concerns about some of the rare plants and the goats, perhaps. What's the story?
Well, I was just curious if they're still moving goats out of the Olympic Peninsula because of the concern of what they were eating, which included a lot of the native rare plants up there.
Yeah, I don't know what the status of that is. So Janet Coles was the park botanist for Olympic, and she actually just retired, and they just hired a new park botanist who I haven't met yet. So yeah, this is something we're seeing in a lot of the agencies, is kind of a generational turnover. So yeah, I don't know the current story for what's going on. But on a related note, I will mention one thing that we're doing this year in updating our state rare plant list is we're probably going to add several Olympic endemics to our state rare plant list. We have somewhere around 10 endemics which to the peninsula, which are plants that only grow on the Olympic Peninsula and nowhere else, as many people here may know. I'll show you a couple slides of those. So things like cotton's milk vetch. This one's probably the one that's declining the fastest. It's maybe declined by 80 to 90%. Let's fleabane, or Olympic fleabane. Olympic, can't see what the top of my slide says. Senecio neo-webstra is what I call it. The Olympic violet and the Olympic bellflower. These are all Olympic endemics that have not been on our state rare plant list historically, that we're potentially going to add this year. Partly they've been overlooked just because we might have assumed that there were more of them than there actually are when we look at the map more closely. Also, things that are in national parks often don't get as much attention because we assume they're not really threatened. But this is a great example of climate change being a threat. It's the Olympics really are not the tallest mountain range. So they're at high risk of losing a lot of the alpine area as forested ecosystems move up into the alpine areas. So we are trying to think about climate change as we update our state rare plant list.
Clearly, some of the pictures you've shared us thus far, Jesse, seem to show plants growing in really precarious habitat, right? I mean, just difficult soils, difficult conditions. I mean, I guess is this just kind of that's just the general type of situation we're going to find ourselves in here?
Well, yeah, I mean, the alpine habitats are a really harsh habitat. These are places where the growing season is very short. So, there's not much time for plants to grow. So these are really typically pretty small, slow growing perennial plants. And these are often really rocky landscapes, partly just because soil formation is really slow in these low productivity environments.
And it would seem like soil composition, I mean, even from the eastern side of the state, very alkaline, You talked about San Verbena, of course, that again, it's sand, it's basically, we're dealing with a lot of salt in the air here. And as the pictures you're looking at here, I mean, the rockiness, that, the lack of soil, as you indicated, I mean, just harsh conditions generally, right, for all these plants.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of our rare plants are rare because they're perhaps not strong competitors. That often these are not the most vigorous plants that become the plants that we're paying attention to.
Hmm.
With relative to the work you're doing here in the state of Washington, how are we doing relative to other states or other regions in North America relative to rare plants, rare plant preservation, etc.?
Yeah, great question. Well, so every state and province in Canada has a natural heritage program. Sometimes they are called something different, but there's some analogous program in every state. So in theory, every state is doing the same kind of work that I do, keeping track of what's going on with all their rare plants and how they're doing. But some states have stronger programs than others. And it kind of works differently in different states. So I guess one example we could compare with would be Oregon, right across the border there, one of our close neighbor. One difference is Oregon has much stronger legal protections for its rare plants. And that's something that we'd really like to see in Washington, is we'd like to see the legislature adopt some of these protections. Where maybe people, right now developers can often just bulldoze rare plants if it's not a wetland. If it's a dry upland habitat, there are no protections on private land. That would be something we could move towards doing. That would make a lot of sense conservation wise, in my opinion. We could also, I'd also like to see more state funding for this work. Currently, our program is largely soft money funded. So the botany program is mostly funded by grants we get from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. So even though I'm the state botanist, the state is not putting up most of the money to pay my salary. The state pays maybe 25% of my salary, and the rest comes from the feds. So I'd like to see the state of Washington invest in having permanent state funded staff to do this kind of work. And that's something that Native Plant Society, so if any of you are not involved in the Native Plant Society as well, that's something to consider joining. In Oregon, we actually have a wonderful success story of the Native Plant Society. So Oregon was in a similar boat historically. The Department of Agriculture had one botanist who was soft funded, getting federal grants to pay his salary. The Native Plant Society actually underwent this prolonged lobbying effort, and they lobbied the legislature to increase funding for the program. They were actually successful, and the Oregon Department of Agriculture now has about 6 employees in their rare plant program, which makes a huge difference for the bandwidth of work they're able to do. So I think we need a similar effort to that in Washington, to really have the state, and you look at the DNR, who I work for, I mean, it's a huge agency, hundreds, and I mean, I'm sure thousands of employees. It's within our reach if it's something that the taxpayers wanted to prioritize. Yeah, Jude.
Are you calling on me, Kelly?
Yeah, please go ahead.
I am very proud of what Oregon did as far as taking care of the rare plants are concerned. I was in the Native Plant Society at the time that happened and lived in Salem, and so was at a lot of the hearings and so on. This state can do it too. But my question is about growing these rare plants, and Kelly's comment about them growing in really harsh conditions. And you indicated that they're not good competitors. So has anybody been doing experiments with growing them in great environmental situations without competition? This would be, of course, a controlled experiment. But I wonder on the efforts to grow some of these rare plants. Are you trying to grow them the way they are up in the rocky parts, or are you trying to grow them in really great soil in nice greenhouses? where they don't have to compete with other plants?
Yeah, great question. Well, first, that's really that's really great to hear that you were involved in that effort in Oregon. Thanks for your work on that. That's really impressive. I think that's one of the great conservation success stories of our time. But yeah, to go to your question. So yeah, I mean, if these plants were strong competitors, they wouldn't be rare typically. So yeah, often our rare plants are not strong competitors. And so the general idea is that they're restricted to these really harsh environments in many cases, not because there's something they intrinsically need about the harsh environment, but just because it's where they can eke out an existence without competition from more vigorous competitors. So and there may be exceptions to this, but in general, we believe that many of these native plants will grow well in a garden environment or in a, less harsh environment in general, if they're protected from competition from more vigorous plants. So many of our rare plants will grow well in a garden environment. There may be a few plants out there that really do require some kind of weird soil. But for example, using the example of serpentine soils, I've done a lot of work with serpentine in California. The plants that we think of as serpentine endemics typically will grow in regular soils. It's just that they seem to be more protected from competition in serpentine soils. So in general, I would say I would predict that that's often going to be the case with our rare plants. And for some of our rare plants where we're doing restoration efforts in the wild, we often we in the broad sense, not our program personally, we often grow seeds in gardens or greenhouses to produce a bunch of seed mass and then take those seeds back out to the native sites to sow them.
Thank you.
And just to give one more example, tandem desert buckwheat, the one that I called the most endangered plant in Washington earlier, it's been very hard to cultivate in the wild. They've been trying to grow outplantings of it for a long time with some success, but not huge success. But it's actually very easy to grow in a garden environment. So it's never going to go extinct entirely, but it may go extinct in the wild.
Jesse, I noticed you talked about, the challenges of pollination, in some of these rare plants up here. And I put in the chat, by the way, that April is Native Plant Appreciation Month, as designated by the Washington Native Plant Society. And one of the webinars being offered on April 15th is Rare Plants and Their Pollinators. And so I'm curious, are there some species dependencies, such as the Oregon silver spot butterfly and the Viola adunca, the yellow violet? Are there similar species dependencies that may be contributing to some of these challenges about rare plant pollination?
That's a great question. And unfortunately, I don't have as much information about that as I wish I did. There are certainly cases where we think that pollination limitation may be a major factor in a species decline. But I can't think of a single case that I know of where we know of a specific missing pollinator, or an example where there's like a single pollinator for a species that's on the decline. That's not to say that there aren't any cases where that's true. But in general, we have not studied the pollination of our rare plants very well. Our 10 federally listed species get a lot of funding and a lot of attention, but the other 360 state listed species are receiving very little attention. There's no funding to monitor them, other than the research that we do in our program, which of course is spread quite thin between that many different plant species. So it may be that there's some really interesting rare pollinators out there that we just have never identified. So I think we have a lot more work to do addressing those kinds of questions.
Val, you put an important part in the in chat talking about one of the simple things that we as people can do, and of course when we're out in the wilds, making sure we're not trampling, outside of the trails and so forth on these habitats. You want to amplify on that?
I do. I've tramped on trails in the Olympics for thousands of miles, and these pictures are so emblematic of the environment. And I've always called these very little, delicate, beautiful flowers survivors. But what people are doing now are running, and they don't observe switchbacks, with which there are a lot of in the Olympics, and they try to go straight down, which causes
Erosion.
what's the word I want? Erosion. And it also kills everything that their feet touches. So I spent a lot of time in the Cascades too, climbing glaciers, and leave no trace is so important. And you will notice it if you walk the trails on Mount Rainier, because people get off the trail a little bit because the dirt trail is too muddy. And what happens is that trail expands and expands and expands, and it becomes a river during snow melt, and it wipes out everything in its path. And then the rangers are so awesome up there. They try to fence off areas that they don't want people in, and people still climb over those fences. So one who loves native plants and has spent a lot of time in those mountains would like to kind of wring their necks on occasion, but I can't do that. And I'm not strong enough anymore. But it's really a hazard. So whenever you go out in the Olympics or any place else, please stay on the trail and get muddy. There's a reason those trails were put where they are. And the great thing about the Olympics is there are a lot of trails, like up to Mount Townsend, that looks like a professionally landscaped garden in July, August, when the natives are blooming. It is so lush and posh with all the varieties that Jesse has shown us. And it just breaks my heart to see people tramping on that. And I haven't heard about the goat situation, but I know when I was still over there before 2019, they had started taking goats out. And they are, it's a public thing, but then there's some really dangerous goats up there who have killed people that they think, oh, it's so calm and they're walking right by us. Well, those little billy goats have quite the sharp antlers or horns or whatever they are. But anyway, I love our native plants up in the mountains. They are so precious and unique, and whatever we can do to preserve those. So thank you for talking about this.
Yeah, and I mean, I agree. It's, visitor impacts, recreation impacts can be a major problem for our rare plants. I think it's kind of a conundrum because in my opinion, we can't expect the public to support conservation, or I guess I could to put it another way, access to natural areas is really important for building public support for conservation. I think it's harder to get people to support conservation of ecosystems that they haven't seen with their own eyes. So I think it's really a management challenge. I think, there is increased interest in outdoor recreation today than there has been in the past. A lot of that came about during the pandemic. And I think, we can channel that for good. There are potentially benefits of this as far as, more interest in the natural world around us. But that means we have to do things like maybe invest more in trail maintenance and, put down some gravel to keep the trails from turning muddy, stuff like that. We have to realize if we're going to have more visitors, we do have to maintain the infrastructure to accommodate them. But I think with appropriate management, that can actually be a good thing. But yeah, I've actually worked on a study at Mount Rainier looking at how far off the trail the visitor impacts extend, looking at lichens and mosses, and it's a really major impact. You have to go, like even 30 feet off the trail. The lichens and mosses are still impacted relative to deeper in the woods.
Following up on that, Jesse, because I know you've studied lichens and mosses in particular, are there particularly rare lichen that we should be aware of? Because obviously, and following up on that, with respect I'll get you, John. Yeah, that's for sure. With respect to air quality and such across and that would affect lichen habitat and lichen health. Are there concerns regarding again, climate change or air quality that would affect the lichen populations in the state?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. Short answer is yes. We've had a draft list of rare lichens in Washington. We're actually working on finalizing the first official lichen list that's going to be adopted by the state and have the same significance as our rare plant list. So keep an eye out for that. That'll be coming out hopefully sometime in the next month or two. But yeah, you know, lichens face all the same threats that plants do, and more. They're more sensitive to air pollution than plants are, as you mentioned. They're also potentially more sensitive to wildfire than plants are. Many plants have mechanisms to regenerate after wildfire or recolonize after wildfire. Lichens, not so much. They burn up. They may take a long time to come back after fire. We haven't had as many really massive wildfires as Oregon has in recent years, but you know, they are coming. I mean, we're going to be my prediction is we'll be facing major challenges with wildfire in Washington in the near future. So, you know, one of the many conservation issues that affects lichens. For those of you who are on or near the coast, that's a really great area of the state for lichens. We have a number of rare lichens that are strict coastal species. One thing you can look around for is Hypogymnia heterophylla, the coastal bone lichen or coastal tube lichen. It's actually pretty common in the coastal shore pine forests. Like at Ledbetter Point, it's on almost every tree out there. But you know, from a statewide perspective, it's quite a rare species. So yeah, lichens are really fun, and the coast is a great place to look for them. One issue that the coastal lichens face is just habitat loss. We've lost so much of our coastal habitat to development. You know, long-term potentially sea level rise could be an issue. But yeah, you all are in a great part of the world for lichens. Also, the air coming off the ocean is a lot cleaner than the air inland. You know, it picks up pollution from as it crosses highways and agricultural areas, cities. So yeah, definitely some of the highest quality lichen communities out there on the coast.
John, you want to have your
Yes, I
comment?
have Quinault Indian gal on her list of mammals that they are dealt with in Olympic National Park, and this was back before there was any white people around, that that mountain goats were there from the get-go.
Hmm.
And if you kept track of that and looked at it, there was a sports club in 1925 that brought 11 goats from the Cascades because they didn't think there was enough mountain goats in the Olympic National Park. They're not an invasive. That's an ignorant statement to think that they're invasive. They're a native animal. And that as far as I'm concerned, that park ranger who's in charge of it, there should be sitting in jail.
So I've put the couple of links to the documenting the program for the goat relocation program, which has ended, you know, in the chat.
Well, that brings up an interesting point, just kind of around the philosophy of how we make decisions in conservation. You know, one perspective, kind of the old school perspective, is that our goal might be to try to recreate the past, but we're realizing in an era of climate change, we can't always, you know, recreate ecosystems we've had in the past. So my perspective is we kind of, you know, we use past conditions as information that can inform our decisions, but we also have to be pragmatic and think about what's possible in the highly altered landscapes of the contemporary world. So in my opinion, it's not as simple as just saying what was here before and recreating that, but also asking, you know, what are our values as a society that we want to be using to inform our decisions, and what kind of ecosystems can we support in a warmer, drier, more fragmented world. And how, you know, and sometimes we have cases where one rare species is incompatible with another rare species. And making these management decisions can be quite challenging. You know, for example, when we have goats that are eating rare plants, you know, what do we do? There's obviously no simple answer.
Well, The marmots eat those plants, deer and elk. I've hiked the Olympics many times and I've seen deer and elk up in high grounds eating native plants. They all enjoy that. Then there's other animals in there that eat native plants. So can't just blame one animal for it.
Other questions, comments? Jesse, in particular, do you think there's actually could be a legislative push to get some of the protections that Oregon has in Washington? You know, has DNR in particular thought about prevailing upon the legislative push to create to introduce some statutes? Because I'm sure we could enlist, DNR could enlist a large population of public supporters for such
Yeah,
statutes.
that's a great question. And I know that some of the higher ups in my program do interact more with the legislature. As far as I know, there has not been a concerted effort to bring about these sorts of changes that we've discussed. But I totally agree. I think no better time than the present to get going on something like that. I think it's absolutely possible. I think the current political condition in Washington is relatively conservation friendly. The public is interested in it. We have a commissioner of public lands who's relatively pro-conservation. The whole government is, I think conditions are favorable all around. So I think we could do it at least as easily as Oregon did it. Not to say it was easy in Oregon.
Well, we're gonna put Jude up there in Olympia, right, and have
There
her
we go. Yeah,
have her,
I'm all for it. Governor Jude. I'd vote for her.
Other questions, comments for Jesse? I've put his contact information, into the chat, right? And I want to encourage, let's encourage, ongoing conversations, and questions and dialogue as these come up. Because again, it was part of our outreach with the public, right? There's simple things, certainly as Val was recommending, stay on the trail, right? That we can do in terms of recommending that for public outreach. And in terms of promoting and growing native plants in our own gardens and encouraging those native plant landscapes, right? This is a broader support for for overall natives. And Jesse, to be sure, native plants are a big emphasis of the Master Gardener program, and and native planting, particularly here in these coastal environments, because everything else is so tough to grow, right? We're already faced with difficult soils, difficult climates, right? And so challenging. We recommend to a lot of newcomers to stick with natives simply because they're going to be easier to make happen.
Absolutely. No, I think it's well, I had a striking experience. I went to grad school. I did my PhD in Madison, Wisconsin, and I was studying native prairie grasslands, and I grew a little prairie garden, planted a bunch of natives in my yard in Madison. And at that time I thought this is a fun little hobby, but it's, pretty inconsequential ecologically, little postage stamp of a native plant garden in the middle of the city. And I was amazed by the diversity of native pollinators that showed up. I mean, literally hundreds of species, dozens and dozens of bees alone, all kinds of stuff. And, walking around the city, you would see, on every block or two, there's one of these gardens, and those gardens together are supporting, a massive population of native pollinators. So I think gardeners can play a really important role. In some cases, especially in the Midwest, the native habitats are mostly gone in the wild. Even here in Washington, we know that resource extraction has taken pretty heavy tolls on our natural ecosystems. So don't underestimate the difference you can make with native plant gardening.
Other questions, comments, encouragement for Jesse?
Well, thanks. Yeah, I really appreciate y'all having me. Great to talk to y'all, and feel free to send me an email anytime. I'm happy to chat more with any follow-up questions.
Jesse, thank you so very much. It's a big deal, you're coming on and sharing it with us here.
Yeah, absolutely. My pleasure. And look forward to crossing paths with some of you in the future. Maybe we can stay in touch about this lobbying effort to get a little more state funding to rare plant conservation.
Thank you, Jesse. So informative.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I want to remind people that what we're talking about here here we go. What we're talking about for our board meeting tonight is at 5:30 p.m. and And I gotta get, I don't know why I'm not sharing that right screen there, but but the URL for that should all be on the, should it be, it's posted here on the screen here, as well as it's available on it in the e-news. So 5:30 p.m. full agenda. I believe Dan Teutenberg is planning to join us here to speak to us regarding the faculty liaison search and recruitment. And we'll have other topics to pick up on. Plenty of volunteer opportunities and continuing education opportunities as we come into this new year. So let's start thinking about arranging our calendars so that we can be in fully support of all the activities that are going on. Any other comments, questions for the good of the order as we conclude our general meeting here today?
Good program, Kelly. Thank you for making these arrangements. You do such a great job at it.
Okay, well,
Your-
keep suggestions coming. All these suggestions come from other people, right? And you can appreciate this is one of, despite the fact that we're not able to get together physically, Zoom enables collaboration with, we can get researchers and people to come talk to us, right? That would otherwise not come to Cosmopolis.
Right. So keep it up.
There you go.
Thank
Okay,
you.
everybody, stay safe. Enjoy the day. We have a sunny day here today, at least for a few more hours. Let's take advantage of it.
Let's go out and
Bye.
prune.
Goodbye, all. Thank you.